Now let's look at a couple examples using the idea that when we have parallel lines crossed by a transversal, that we know that some certain special relationships exist between pairs of the angles in that situation. So to start with, it says that suppose the measure of angle 4 is 83 degrees. Find the measure of each other angle. Okay, so let's jump into this. I know that when my lines are parallel, so parallel lines, let's actually write the word parallel out. Parallel lines leads to same side interior angles that are supplementary. It leads to alternate interior angles that are congruent. It leads to corresponding angles that are congruent. And it leads to alternate exterior angles that are congruent. So using this information, we can kind of just start going down the list here and figuring out what some of these other angles are. First of all, let's look at angle 4 and let's think about what angle would be a same side interior angle to angle 4. Well, that would be angle 6, correct? So that would tell me that because the same side interior angles are supplementary, that the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 6 has to equal 180. So if I substitute 83 in for the measure of angle 4, then that means that the measure of angle 6 would just be equal to 180 minus 83, which is going to be 97 degrees. So angle 6 is 97 degrees. Now we move on to the fact that alternate interior angles are congruent. Well, that would lead us to say that angles 4 and 5 would be congruent because they're alternate interior angles. So we can put 83 degrees down for angle 5. Also, we would be able to say that angles 3 and 6 are congruent because they're also alternate interior angles. So angle 3 is 97 degrees. Next, we can look at the fact that corresponding angles are congruent. So if I come to my picture and I look at angle 4, and I notice that it's kind of in the lower right-hand position among this group of 4, that means that it corresponds to angle 8, which is also in the lower right-hand position. So angles 4 and 8 are congruent, so angle 8 is 83 degrees. And now with angle 3, we could say that it corresponds to angle 7 because they're both in the lower left-hand position. So angle 7 is 97 degrees. We can look at angle 5 and say, okay, that's in the top left-hand position among this lower group of 4, and so is angle 1. It's in the top left-hand position among this group of 4. So angle 1 is 83 degrees. And finally, we can say that angles 6 and 2 are corresponding, so that means angle 2 is going to be 97 degrees. Now, there are other ways that we could have gone about figuring out these angle measures. We could have used things like vertical angles being congruent. We could have used things like linear pairs being supplementary. There's lots of different ways that we could have done it. But what we find out is that these things over here would be enough to figure out all the missing angles in this problem. Now in the next example, we're going to involve a little bit of algebra. It says, suppose the measure of angle 1 is 9x plus 2 degrees. So I'm going to put in here 9x plus 2 degrees. And the measure of angle 4 is 12x minus 11 degrees. Find the measure of angle 3. Now if I look at this picture and I look at angle 3, I can think about a couple different things. I can think about the fact that angles 3 and 4 form a linear pair, so they should be supplementary. Same thing with angles 3 and 5, they should be supplementary. I can also think about the fact that angles 3 and 1 are corresponding angles, and they should therefore be congruent. So really, if I can find the measure of any angle, 1, 4, or 5, then I can use that information to figure out the measure of angle 3. But to find the measure of any of those angles, I first need to figure out what x would be. All right? So let's set about trying to do that. Now, if I look at angles 1 and 4, they don't have one of the special relationships that we've been learning about. They're not alternate interiors, same side interiors, corresponding angles, or alternate exterior angles. But I do know that angles 4 and 5 are congruent. So even though it says that angle 4 is 12x minus 11 degrees, I can also say that angle 5 is 12x minus 11. And I know that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 5 has to equal 180 because, oh, and I forgot to say in this beginning of this problem, we're assuming that these lines are parallel. Okay, so these two lines are parallel, and when those lines are parallel, my same side interior angles are going to be supplementary. So now if I substitute these algebraic expressions up here into this equation, then I should have something I can work on to solve. So I'm going to say 9x plus 2 plus 12x minus 11 should come out to equal 180. And then I'm going to combine my like terms, so 21x, and then that's going to combine with that, so I'll have minus 11 equals 180. And then I'm going to add 9 to both sides, so 21x equals 189. And then I'm going to divide both of these sides by 21, and that's going to give me x equals 9. So now I know x equals 9. I'm not done, though, because that's not what I'm supposed to find. I'm supposed to find the measure of angle 3. Remember, I decided that angle 3 is going to be the same measure as angle 1. And since I now know what x is equal to, I can say that the measure of angle 1, which it said was 9x plus 2, will be 9 times 9 plus 2, which is 81 plus 2, which is 83 degrees. So the measure of angle 3 is going to be 83 degrees.